You are listening to Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast.
When your heart is aching and your world is shaking, don't give up. No, don't give up.
Hello and welcome to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and I am so excited to have our next guest with us, Nicole Jansen. Nicole has over the past 30 years, has empowered thousands of business owners and visionary leaders to generate millions of dollars while making a greater positive impact in the lives of others. As a coach and strategic advisor, she is passionate about helping leaders shift their perspective and solve complex business and rational issues. Oh my gosh, I can't even get your bio out because I'm so excited. An aim of creating a more just and prosperous world for everyone. By the way, I could get totally behind that statement. She is the founder of Discover the Edge and the Leaders of Transformation podcast. And that's Leaders with an S because there's room for more than one. We were just talking about that. And reaching listeners in 140 countries. I am so excited to have you here with us today, Nicole. Welcome.
Thank you, Jana. I'm excited to be here too.
I really was nervous when I was reading in your bio because I'm so excited to have you here today. I'm kind of a super fan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm a big fan of yours, and it's incredible what you're doing with your podcast and your magazine and everything that you've got going on. It's impressive.
Thank you. And by the way, she's going to be in one of our upcoming magazines in January. So be looking for that. But the first thing we ask everyone to do when they come on the show is to share a story of hope, Nicole, because I really believe our journeys are like literally a blessing in disguise. And we may not recognize that when we're in the midst of it. But when you look back, I promise you're going to be like, that's why. And you're going to have this beautiful aha moment. But when we're sharing those stories, we're giving others hope and helping them get through the next phase of their journey. So do you want to share your story with us today?
Sure. Well, I think when I look at my life, I think it's just been what you talked about. It has been one story after the other. And in the valleys is where I grew the most and was able to, if you will, traverse the mountaintops because of what I learned in the valleys. And so one of the stories that I want to share is business related, because we're going to talk a little bit about that, is that when I was growing up, I always wanted to be successful in business. And I was a hard charging, driven young woman. And you know what? Things didn't quite work out the way I expected them to. I actually built a successful business with my family, as well as having my own business. And over the years, like I really, I worked hard. I did everything all the right things. And I got to the point where I thought that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And when that business fell apart, I really was left with this question, actually 3 questions. First question was, who am I? Second question is, why am I here? And the third question is, what do I have to offer? And when I started exploring those questions, I discovered who I really was. And so all of the things, and I learned so much in the process of building a very successful 8-figure business and then having it fall apart. But more than anything, I learned about myself. I learned what I was passionate about, what I liked, what I didn't like. And it's really the reason why I do what I do now and why leadership is so important to me and why transformation is so important to me, because I saw great leaders and I saw poor leaders. I at sometimes was a great leader, and at other times I was a really poor leader. And so I got to learn, and we start with leading ourselves. We start with leading in our own lives. And that's where it begins, and asking ourselves different questions. I started at one point, I was asking myself questions like, what's wrong with me? Why am I doing this? Why is it not working for me? And I started asking, when I discovered and realized those questions were not really helpful when I got the answers to them, I started asking different questions, and those different questions led to different answers and different solutions. And it's really led me to where I am today. So that's just one of the stories, and I got lots. But that's one of the stories that so I would encourage the people that are listening is whatever you're going through, because adversity is the greatest teacher, where we can, and I say it is or it could be one of the greatest teachers, where you really get to the point where you can't ignore what is, you've got to face it and then decide what you're going to do with it. And when you do that, you have the opportunity to break through that threshold and become a very a much more capable, much more expanded human being. And it's like any seed that gets planted in the ground has to break and be fall apart before it can grow and thrive. So I just encourage you, if you're going through difficult times, that you will get through it. Just stay with it. As one of my mentors would say, stay with it and get around really good people, create a healthy, safe environment. This, what Jana, what you're doing, what you're creating here is this healthy, safe environment for people to deal with what's going on, as is it, get the love and support they need, and be able to grow and thrive.
One of the things that you just said, and I believe it has a little bit to do too with the article you wrote for us, is if you change your words, you change your world. And that means in the questions that you're asking yourself, right? So maybe we just change those, why can't I do this? Why am I failing? Why, to what can I do different? How can I make it? And just change those questions for yourself. You open up a whole new world. And by the way, I won't even go into the mindset part of what it does to your brain when it starts seeing those types of questions coming through and processing. It really does change your world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, our words create our world. Life and death is in the power of our tongue. Reality is created by agreement. It's a principle. It's a principle. It's an undeniable principle. When we speak our world into existence. We articulate, we use our words, and so often when we don't realize it, we use those words against ourselves. Why can't I do this? Or why isn't this working for me? Or I'm gonna be getting a cold this year. I always get a cold. Every winter I get a cold. Why would you ever say that to yourself, right? When we think about it, we learn by conditioning to say those things, because a lot of times that is our reality. But if you want to change your reality, I love what Joel Osteen says. He says, don't use your words to describe your situation. Use your words to transform your situation. And so rather than speaking what is, or the fear of what you think might happen, is using those words. And that's what I learned to do, is to use those words to actually transform my situation, to transform my view of the world, so that I could actually create that and call that in.
I think that is beautifully said. I have people though that will say that makes them feel like imposter syndrome. And anybody who's a visionary, who's a dreamer, will tell you that is not true. If you're saying I'm a surgeon, you go out there and try to do brain surgery and you're not, that totally could be a problem. But if you're saying, for me, I'm going to have a successful magazine, and I kept telling myself that I did not have it. It took me a year of building to start seeing that success. But I kept telling my brain that that's where I was going. It didn't have a choice. It was on the tracks to go with me. So it really does make a big difference. And for those of you who think that it's more of an imposter syndrome to say things that aren't real yet, that's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking, like, let's say you don't know how to do something. Let's say, with the example of being a surgeon, you don't know how to be a surgeon, but you know what? You can speak it into existence, saying, I'm becoming a great surgeon. I am learning. I can figure it out. A lot of times people, get into a situation where they don't have the answers. I don't know how to deal with this. This is an unknown. I would like to go here, but I've got all this fear and considerations or setbacks. But what you can do is you can at least tell yourself and say, I can figure it out. I'm a smart person. I can figure this out. I figured stuff out before. I can figure this out. I built this before. I can build this, and even if it is the first time you're doing something, you can say, I can do this. Look and lean back on successes in your past. Oftentimes we focus on the things we did wrong. We focus on the things that are not working. What we focus on expands, as you know this. And so it's like when we focus on, I'm hungry, the more you focus on being hungry, the more hungrier you're going to be. And so in the same way, it's just because our brain, and I'm speaking to the choir here, Jana, because I know you know all this, is like, but the reticular activating system in our brain is filters in what is important to us and filters out what's not important to us. And our subconscious mind is that problem solver that you were talking about. And so it's like when you focus on something, it actually starts to call in, and it starts to open that filter up to see the things that are actually going to allow you and to support you in creating that different outcome. So people say, well, I'm struggling in business, or I'm struggling in life, or I can't find, there's no good men out there anymore, or whatever it is, or the women are all like this, and they have this view of the world, and the world will then confirm for you that that's what is. But if you actually change that and say, actually, there's a young woman that I've been working with, and she's having trouble, in her dating life is not going well and so forth. She had a breakup that didn't go well. And so, I've been talking to her about changing the language to say there are like so many options out there, so many amazing men out there that I get to meet. And even with her doing that, what it'll do is it'll shift her reticular activating system where she will start to see different. She may see that guy that's been walking by her. She's been seeing, pass by maybe at the cafe that she didn't even notice. But now all of a sudden her mind is not shut down to the possibility. It's opened to the possibility. And when we project that out, it's amazing. It's whether it's in personal life, whether it's in business, whether it's in health, it applies to everything. The inner game really is it does reflect. It is like the roots, the inner game determine the fruits.
I love that you were saying this. And honestly, for relationships, for those of you who are in relationships and have a breakup, I had a client one day that showed up and was in tears, and I'm not a relationship coach, but I could tell she was distraught. And she told me that she felt awful because she had broken out with yet another boyfriend, and that she was like damaged goods. She could never hold a relationship. And my whole insight on that was, thank goodness you didn't go weeks, months, years until you found out that this was not the right person. He released you. Like that's what dating's all about. You go through the process. This is the right person for me. And if they are, you keep moving forward. And if they're not, you get released back out into the beautiful world to find that right person. So now you have no hangouts. You get to go out there and find that right person. And literally it changed her whole, she didn't start thinking that there's something wrong with me. I must be broken. Just kept meeting the wrong person for her. So I love that you can just definitely change those words and literally change how you see the world and how you go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And even the words we use, that if you want to feel a certain way, like joy, say, what would it take for me to feel joy, rather than, oh, I feel sad, or I feel this way. Even just asking yourself, we were talking about asking questions and saying, what would it take for me to feel joy right now? What would it take for me to feel happy right now, excited right now? And if you're feeling sad, maybe another question will be, how do I want to feel right now? How would I like to feel right now? And what would it take when's the last time I thought that I felt that way? Remember a time, what was that time when I felt really excited? And bring yourself back into focus of that. Because you have muscle memory, right? In your body, there's cellular memory. And so your body remembers how it feels, even if your mind may not, call it to attention right away, or your heart is hurting. And so maybe it's not as clear, but when you start thinking and you start again focusing on when was a time when I felt sad, but when was a time when I felt happy? When was a time I felt fully and completely and wholly loved? And you go back and you actually place yourself in that space and remember that it shifts your state of being. And when you shift your state of being, you show up differently into the world. And then you can become a magnet for good things, so it reminds me, so Tony Robbins talks about the triad. If you want to change your experience of life, he talks about change your words, change your focus, and change your state. And it's really applying all three of those things.
So I think applying all three of those things is super important. And for people who don't understand what she's talking about attracting things to you, it's a vibration you put out into the world. So for instance, if you're having a bad day and you wake up and the first thing when your feet hit the ground is you're in a miserable day, like I cannot do this today. And you're like, what is wrong with everybody? Like I'm meeting the worst people today. What's happening? Why is this happening to me? Take a look in the mirror, because you really are getting what you reflect out into the world. And so it's super important to understand how that vibration works. And if you just go shut yourself in the bathroom or a closet, regroup, change that vibration. Find, like you said, pull up a past memory. Like, okay, yesterday was a good day, especially at lunch. What was that? Why was it such a good day at lunch? And you start recalling that. Step out of that closet or bathroom, and I promise you that vibration you put out will change.
One of the things that happened to me years ago was I could be in a good mood, and maybe this will help someone who's listening. I could be in a good mood, and then all of a sudden I'm like having this great day, and all of a sudden I feel like it's like this blanket was placed on me of heaviness. And all of a sudden I feel terrible. And I'm like, what just happened? And so what I would ask myself, and I would start to think and overthink, and why is this? Why is this? Why is this? And I learned from one of my mentors this technique, which is just literally just to stop it. Like just because a thought comes in doesn't mean you need to entertain it, take it on, own it. It may not even be your thought. It could be what's going on out there, because everything is energy. And so when that thought came in, I started just saying to myself, stop, no. And it was like, I'm talking to that little voice, inner voice in my head, that inner dialogue. And I'm like, no. And I remember when I started doing this, I was walking around my condo and I'm like, stop, 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 and it's like this little thing on my shoulder was saying, but I just want to get in there, with the negative. And as I kept doing it though, and I silenced it and then replaced it, because you can't just eliminate a bad habit. You need to replace it with a good habit. And so I replaced it with, no, I am happy. I am joyful. I have good things. I am grateful. I am blessed. I am favored. I am loved. I am whatever, right? When I started doing that, it created new neural pathways in my brain, and it silenced that. And it's not like what you're talking about, imposter syndrome. It's not like I'm pretending like I'm trying to outrun it. I am literally transforming it. And it's like we have neural pathways in our brain. And, when you've been thinking a certain way for a certain amount of time, you're going to have like ruts that it's easy. That's the easy way for your brain to go. But when you stop that and you create a new pathway, just like, I'm from Canada, so I know what it's like in the wintertime when you're driving in the snow, and if you drive in the snow long enough, you're going to create ruts in the road. But when you go on to the next, you switch lanes and you start creating, it's like a fresh path, you can create a new trail, you can create a new path. And so when you do that, the other one, just like any kind of muscle, it starts to atrophy. And so as this old one atrophies and this new one gets built up, it becomes a new way that's in the natural pattern. So I don't need to do that anymore, because I did enough. It's like that repetition, right? Is the mother of skill, right? Is doing it over and over again. I got to the point where this became my new homeostasis, right? Where I would think, of things of who I am and not what I'm not, or not the things that are negative or the things that went wrong, but looking at the things that went right, and you trained my brain to see those things. And so it gets easier over time, but maybe that's a technique for people. Sometimes you just got to say, stop, like to that thought, like, I do not receive you. I reject you, and just don't let it in to get a foothold in your mind and in your heart.
Nicole, that is not only so powerful, but every year I try to pick one thing that I can work on. And of course, January, it was about removing toxic things from ourselves. And my whole article was about releasing the toxic words we use, that little monkey voice that goes on in your head. And that is one of the main things, is learning to say, creating that new pathway, learning to say, this thought does not serve me. And you know what I've learned, starting to be aware of it, because next year, like, I'm really going to be focused on that. But I started already, and I noticed I'm kind of judgmental. And here's the thing, I don't think I am, but then I'll see somebody wearing something funky, and the minute I'm like, what was she thinking when she got dressed? And immediately I say, nope. You know what she was probably thinking? She's so secure with her body image and who she is, that she walked out and feels beautiful. And I am envious of her body image, confidence. And I could use me some of that. So I immediately try to change those thought processes in my brain, because that conversation that we have in our heads is the only thing holding you back or driving you forward. And once you get that power back and say, stop, that thought does not serve me or anyone else, and you redirect that pathway, it empowers you to do so much, which leads me into what I want to talk to you about next. Leaders of transformation. I want to talk about your podcast. Who's it for? What are they learning? What are they experiencing in that?
Yeah, so I have difference makers and world changers that I interview every week on the show. And so it is really for the entrepreneur. It's for the aspiring leader, or maybe an established leader that wants to go to that next level. But the common theme really is people that want to make a difference, and wherever they are in the stage of their life, in their business or their career. They want to make a difference. And that's really who it's for. And we talk about tips and ways that, and we talk a lot, there's a lot of stories of the people that are on the show, what they did, how did they transform to go from where they were to where they are today. And it really is transforming the way people see themselves, others, and the world around them, because our beliefs determine our behaviors, drive our behaviors. Our behaviors, of course, ultimately lead to our results. And so, yeah, it's been incredible. Some of the guests that we've had on the show, and very diverse. You know, some are leadership consultants and some are business experts, and some people are in the personal development space or in mindset, you know, with like life coaching and so forth. And then we've had some people that are more in the holistic health, you know, aspect or the spiritual aspect. But the commonalities are, you know, it's again what we've been talking about, right? It's like, how do you see yourself? How do you see others? How do you see the world around you? How are you transforming the area, the arena that you're in, whether that's business or whether that's at home, whether that's what, you know, wherever it is that you play, your arena? How do you transform that? And one of the things and my goals out of that show is really to bust the paradigm of what is possible. So I like having guests on that talk about things that I've never really heard anybody talk about. I had a gentleman on my show a few years back, and his name was Roger Nirenberg, and he's a symphony orchestra, just brilliant in his arena, and conductor, and it was the word I was looking for. And he kind of came by it by accident, but he was doing some kind of educational piece and promoting classical music or whatever, and had some people there. And he came across this scenario and actually simulated the scenario with his orchestra and realized how powerful this was as a teaching tool. So now he works with leaders. He's got this program he works with. It's the music paradigm is what it's called. And he'll work with leaders, and with whatever challenges they're facing in their business, he will actually simulate it for them in the orchestra, because him as a leader leading all of these musicians and group, you know, there's like section leaders and all of this. And then he'll show them what good, for example, what good looks like. And he'll give them direction on what he wants them to do. And then he'll switch and he'll say, okay, now I want you to play like this. And they actually get to hear and see the difference between good and great. And then they start unpacking what that looks like in terms of if they were to apply that to their organization. And so like, I'm like, oh, never thought of doing that, you know, or somebody else who's disrupting for good in a permanent way of saying, rather than us just, you know, rescue children from slavery, how do we eliminate the supply chain and the demand entirely and for good? And it's having those conversations so people start thinking, and it kind of busts the paradigm of them saying, wow, I never even thought that was possible. And if that's possible, what else is possible? And what could I do to make a difference in the world? And so that's what the podcast is really about.
I love that. What I love the most about what you do, Nicole, is that for every successful business, I'm telling you, there's a mission behind it. If you watch Shark Tank, they ask them their story, and it's they were immigrants that came with no money and they had to get their education. Like, their stories are so powerful. Once you get that mission behind why you want to do what you're doing and who you're doing it for, it sets you above and beyond anyone else even coming remotely close to what it is you're doing. So if you have to take a week, a month, whatever that is, to really dig in to what that mission is behind what you're doing, it will change how you're doing business and the growth of your business for sure. Would you not agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is your driving force. And so when you're making decisions in a business, and this applies even, you can say, even somebody in a marriage, right? A couple in a marriage. What's the purpose of your marriage? What is the mission? When you have children, people, a lot of times they'll just have children and it's like, well, we just had them because that's what happened, you know, got the announcement that we were pregnant. Yay, we're having children. And some people will have a goal of like, I just want my kids to grow up and be healthy. Awesome. Some people take it another step further and they'll say, my goal is I want our family to not just be healthy, but I want us to be happy. I want us to be connected. I want us to make sure that we invest and prioritize our relationship, this home, this home team, if you will, this home environment, this place for these kids to grow and to thrive. And they can see parents that are supporting and loving and kind. And so we want healthy, functioning adults. You see, there's a difference there in what their intention is. And yes, some go overboard and they're like, I want my child to go to the NBA or whatever, because no, I'm not talking about you portraying and putting your own dreams and goals on someone else. That's not what I'm saying. But there is something in creating a mission that is a centering mission, that whenever you make decisions, you're looking and saying, does this help us to get closer to our mission, or does it cause us to go further away? And so, maybe that's the executive that may say, oh, well, you know what, I have this huge opportunity and I could be traveling and so forth. And then they ask themselves the question, okay, if this is what we've agreed to over here, does that support it? Or is there a way that I can not just have to choose either or, that we can do the yes and that's where like work-life balance comes in, because of the priority. And I say that because maybe there's somebody out there listening and it's like you all of a sudden realize, hey, wait a second, I'm doing this and I'm aspiring over here, but I kind of missed the original intent, or I got away from what was the initial intent. We're talking about holistic life, right? Living your best life now. So in doing that is you got to be really clear. So you have your personal mission and your family mission, and then ultimately then it spills out over into your career and your business and all that. They need to be aligned. Right. And it makes decision making that much easier.
I love that. 100%. Can you tell us, Nicole, where people can connect with you, where they can go listen to your podcast and get more goodness from you?
Sure. Well, they can go to leadersoftransformation.com. That's the website. And we're all over social and of course, all the major podcast platforms as well.
Well, that's where I found her, by the way, and I was super excited to connect with her. Thank you so much for being on the show. I could have you back a million times. Like, I cannot believe 30 minutes has already flown by. You are so amazing. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Oh My Health, There Is Hope podcast. Make sure to visit Jana's website, bestholisticlife.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, or listen there, so you'll never miss an episode. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you simply tell a friend about the show, that'll help too. Let's change the world together, one health expert at a time. Looking forward to seeing you next time.